Are you interested in some spicy new deck tech? Well, here's your host, Capital G!
Ladies and gentlemen, Capital G here, back at it with Junji, the Midnight Sky, and a big thank you to Lunchbox for that little opening salvo, shall we say. Just thought I'd experiment and play around with that, and let me know if you like it. He'd be excited to do more voiceover work, so he can be as bombastic or as laid back as he likes, so yeah, we went with a bombastic opening to kind of start us off, but I mean, let me know how you like the opening, if we can tweak that a little bit. And also, if you want to get in on some of that sweet voiceover action, always drop a message to my friend Lunchbox. You'll find him over on the Dungeons and Cardboard Discord group. RLGS Way from RLGS, free to join and free to play. Lots of magic, Flesh and Blood, Dungeons and Dragons, the whole shebang. So come check us out. We also share a lot of our content creators stuff, including Bulldogs. So Bulldog got to show off some Pokemon Arceus. So we've been almost convinced me to buy the game. I'm not gonna lie, I've got too much of a backlog right now to drop another 70-80 on a big title, but there you go. Almost bought into it. But one thing I am going to be buying into is Kamigawa Neon Dynasty and Junji the Midnight Sky. Have ourselves a mono black dragon spirit in the vein of Kakusho. Black and 3 for 5/5 with flying and menace, so a pretty good beater to begin with. We have some options whenever it dies. We get to either have each of our opponents discard 2 cards and lose 2 life, or we can put a non-dragon creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under our control at the measly cost of 2 life. So, because we want to play with the dice trigger and we really want to, lean into it, this particular list is running on the concept that Junji, when it dies, does not return to the command zone. Graveyard every single time. So we're playing Mono Black Reanimator, and Junji is our target. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the deck, let's start with some artifacts, including, a pretty meat and potato card in Altar of Dementia. Obviously, this 2-mana altar, very popular in our format. We can sacrifice a creature to have target player put any number of cards equal to the sacrificed creatures from the top of their library into their graveyard. So, yeah, mill our opponents for 5, or we can mill ourselves for 5 if we need to fill up our graveyard. Generally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of blind mill, but for the decks that this would disrupt, it's a good weapon, and it's just a nice free sacrifice outlet. Rock the Bantu's Monument to reduce the casting cost of our black creatures by 1, and whenever we cast a creature spell, each of our opponents will lose a life and we gain a life. A lot of our spells will cause us to pay life, so any little incremental gain that we can get, we'll take. The Cauldron of Souls. Obviously, we tap this before we sacrifice our Junji, and, it'll gain Persist, so it'll come right back onto the battlefield. Yes, please. Charcoal Diamond for the ramp. Heraldic Banner also gives us ramp in black, and it also gives us a little bit of a mini anthem, +1 to all our black creatures' power. Jet Medallion to reduce the cost of our black spells by 1. Mind Stone, of course. Taps for a colorless, or we can cash it in for a card later on. Mirage Mirror, we can have a lot of fun with this card. You get to see all sorts of cool tricks with this, so I figured I'd put something tricky in here. Coming from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty is the Makotai Soul Ripper. 2 mana for this vehicle. It seems kind of odd to put a vehicle here, but here's why. Whenever this attacks, we may sacrifice another artifact or creature. If we do, this gets a +1/+1 counter and gains menace. So it's just sort of a sacrifice outlet that still allows us to, throw some damage around. The Network Terminal. There's a lot of people who didn't quite spot this one when we were going through the spoiler list, but I did. It's a 3-mana mana rock, but it has a cool feature where you can pay 1 and then tap this and another artifact we control to draw and discard a card. So a little bit of repeatable card filtering when we need it. And many of our artifacts don't care if they're tapped or not to work. One that does care is Soul Ring, of course, because we want that double colorless. And Strionic Resonator to copy the triggers. Now remember, once you choose a mode on Junji, you're copying the same mode when you use this on the trigger. That's what the intention is to copy the dice trigger. Going on to our creatures. Obviously, Apprentice Necromancer. It's a good way to bring a creature back. And yes, we have to... Yes, it gains haste, so we get to swing with it. And yes, we have to sacrifice it, but that's fine because this is going to be used on Junji. Ayara, first of Locthwain. Triple black for this Elf Noble from Eldraine. Tap, sacrifice another black creature, such as our commander, to draw a card. And also, whenever a black creature enters the battlefield under our control, each of our opponents will lose a life and we gain a life. One cool black creature, of course, is Dockside Chef. 1 black for this 1/2 human citizen. But pay 2 mana, sacrifice an artifact or a creature to draw a card. Nice. Doomed Necromancer. So 3 mana for this 2/2. It's black, tap, sack. Get a creature card from our graveyard back onto the battlefield. Rocking the Gravelighter, also new from Kamigawa. 2/2 for this Flying Spirit. And when this enters the battlefield, we've got some flexibility here depending on when we play it. If a creature died this turn, we get to draw a card. If a creature hadn't yet died this turn, each player sacrifices a creature, ourselves included. Which means, yes, another way to sacrifice our commander. Obviously, he's inspired by Kokusho, so Kokusho's here too to be a bit more business end in the mid to late game. The Merciless Executioner, have everybody sacrifice a creature, ourselves included. Yep, I'm running Mike and Trike in here. There's Mike, there's Trike. We all know this combo well, but for those that are not familiar, the idea is you remove your +1/+1 counters from the Triskelion to deal damage to targets. The last counter you remove targets the Triskelion itself. That way it dies to, that way it would die. And then Mikaeus says, hey, it died, it did not have a +1/+1 counter on it. When it died, it comes back into play. So that's the infinite combo. But Mikaeus just synergizes very well with our commander as well. Moving on from there is the Plague Crafter. Again, another way to get everyone to sacrifice creatures or planeswalkers. Players who can't actually discard a card, which is very much on theme with what we're doing. The Solemn Simulacrum, of course. Get some ramp, get some extra card draw. Undercity Scrounger. Tap to create a treasure, but only if a creature died this turn. That seems really good to me. Young Necromancer. When this enters the battlefield, we may exile 2 cards from our graveyard to return a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. Again, ideally we're returning Junji. And Zulaport Cutthroat again for that little bit of aristocracy life gain, life loss. Moving on to enchantments with the Bastion of Remembrance. And once again, opponents lose life, we gain life. Kaya's Ghostform. When enchanted permanent dies or is put into exile, it comes right back onto the battlefield. So obviously we're throwing this on our commander before we sacrifice it. Now the mode we're going to choose 9 times out of 10 when we're sacrificing it is to have our opponents lose life and discard cards. So how much more effective is that once we've got things like Liliana's Caress or Migrum on the battlefield? So yeah, that's kind of the mean part of the strategy. We are definitely going to be taking all those resources away from our opponents, and later in the game, of course, we always have the option to bring one of their creatures back onto the battlefield with our commander. But before we do, let's get some damage in. The Phyrexian Arena, of course, to draw cards and lose. Yes, we lose a life every time, and yes, it's not so great in the late game, but still a very effective card, especially early. Phyrexian Reclamation. If we don't have a reanimate spell, okay, we'll pay the 2 mana and the 2 life and get our commander right back from the graveyard into our hand. Raider's Wake, another one of those Migrum effects. Sanctum of Stonefangs. This is just to insulate our own life total and, drain our opponents a little bit. It's the only one of the shrines we're running in this deck. At the beginning of our pre-combat main phase, each opponent loses X life and we gain X, where X is the number of shrines we control. So 1. But it makes a big difference over the course of the game. The Long Reach of Night. Each opponent sacrifices a creature unless they discard a card. Again, our commander's making our opponents discard cards, so chances are they're sacrificing creatures to this. And of course, on Chapter 3, we get the Animus of Night's Reach, which As long as there's a bunch of cards on our opponent's graveyards, chances are this is going to swing in for a bunch of damage. Rocking the Meat Hook Massacre. In spite of, shall we say, the controversy around the pricing of Innistrad double feature, there are still people buying into the set, and they might pull this beauty. And if you do, well, anytime a creature we control dies, our opponents lose a life. And anytime one of our creatures' opponents dies, we gain life. So does that whole like life insulation thing that we need, and also can act as a board wipe. Tribute to Harobi. Thought this was just a fun include. For 2 mana, we get the Saga with Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, giving each of our opponents a 1/1 rat creature token. Why would we want to do that? Well, we hit Chapter 3, Echo of Death's Wail. You get a 3/3 with Flying Haste, and when it enters the battlefield, we get all of those rat tokens. So any of those rat tokens that haven't died or got traded off in combat yet, they're coming to us. And whenever this attacks, we can sacrifice another creature if we do draw a card. We can sacrifice the rat if we like, or perhaps we can sacrifice our commander and get that card. It's also one of the few of these sagas that turn into creatures that have haste, and this was a point I touched upon. I'm going to keep saying it. They all should have had haste. I'm glad this one does. On to Instance with Assassin's Ink. We've actually got quite a few artifacts and enchantments, so why not play a spell that can just read double black, destroy target creature or planeswalker at instant speed. Rocking the Debt to the Kami. 3 mana for this instant. Target opponent exiles a creature they control, or target opponent exiles an enchantment they control. So black having a way to, knock out an enchantment? Sure thing. That's why we're running this here. Great new common. Grim Return from M14. Really, really gruesome art, this one, but it tells the whole story of this person. Or can we still call them a person? Not sure. Anyways, black and 2 for this instant. Choose target creature card in a graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. It comes into the battlefield under our control. So it could be one of our creature's opponents that dies, or it could be our commander. Either way. Malakir Rebirth. Yes, we have the option of playing it as Malakir Mire, but we don't want to do that. We want to play it as Malakir Rebirth. Choose target creature. We lose 2 life. Until end of turn, if it dies, it comes right back onto the battlefield, tapped under our control. So we are playing a bunch of these effects to get those dice triggers over and over and over again. Reckoner's Bargain, coming in from Neon Dynasty as well, black and 1. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice an artifact or a creature. And then we gain life equal to the sacrificed permanent's mana value and draw 2 cards. So just another sack outlet coming out of our hand that draws us some cards. Rescue from the Underworld is a good one. As an 5 mana instant, as an additional cost, we sacrifice a creature. Choose target creature card in your graveyard. Return that and the sacrificed creature to the battlefield at the beginning of our next upkeep. So if someone wipes our board and we just happen to have at least one other creature in our yard, boom, everything's coming back. Return to action. Black and 1 instant. Until end of turn, target creature gets 1/0, gains lifelink, and when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So we can swing, cast this, gain the life, deal the damage, sacrifice our commander, and back to the battlefield it comes. Sacrifice. I talked about gruesome art, but the really, really old school art, this is actually downright frightening. 1 black, sacrifice a creature, add an amount of black mana to our mana pool equal to that creature's casting cost. So we sacrifice our commander, we've got 5 mana with this. Undying Malice. For 1 black until end of turn. Target creature gains. When it dies, it comes back to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Sure. Wake the Dead, once again. Black X, return X target creature cards from our graveyard to the battlefield. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. And you are already dead. I'm going to run this on a lot of black decks from now on, I think, because this is such a meme card. 1 black for this common. Destroy target creature that was dealt damage this turn. Yes, please. Gonna go through our lands now. I'm not the one that runs the Urborg and Cabal Coffers package, so just the Cabal Stronghold. Rocking the Castle Locthwain lets us draw some cards if we start to run low. The Drownyard Temple, if our lands ever end up in the graveyard for whatever reason, we can bring this one back. Here's the reason why a land could end up on our graveyard. The Gyre Reach Sanitarium. 2 tap, each player draws a card, then discards a card. So great little card filtering in our mana base. I've always loved this card since it originally came out. I forget if it was Shadows or Eldritch where it came out, but either way, it's been a fantastic workhorse for me. High Market, another way to sacrifice our commander right there in the mana base. And Phyrexian Tower, bit of a money card, but this commander calls for it. You know, sacrifice our commander, get double black mana, sure thing. The Roadside Welcry. Again, we have lots of artifacts, lots of enchantments. So having a 2 tap sack and draw 2 in our mana base, yes please. Rocking 27 Swamps. And Tekinuma, Abandoned Mire. The new legendary lands from this set, they all come in untapped if you play them as a land. If we draw this late, sure, we'll pay the black in 3. We'll discard it, mill 3 cards, return a creature or planeswalker card from our graveyard to our hand. The ability costs 1 less to cast for each legendary creature we control. We don't actually run a lot of legendary creatures, but that's not the point. It's just another way to bring our commander from the graveyard to our hand in our mana base. 1 lonely planeswalker, but she's a good one. Liliana, Dreadhorde General. Whenever a creature we control dies, and our commander is going to die over and over and over again, we draw a card. And -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures. Controls the board pretty nicely. If it's time for us to build up a little bit of a zombie army, we can always +1 to create a 2/2 zombie creature. If we get to the -9, well, it's lights out for the table, but obviously we're not pushing for that per se. We just want the value she brings us. 15 sorceries, including the Demonic Tutor. Again, we want to be able to bring our commander back over and over again, and sometimes we just need a specific card to do it, so let's go get it. Dread Return just brings a creature from our graveyard back onto the battlefield and has flashback of sacrifice 3 creatures, so nice little back pocket secondary mode. Feed the Swarm, destroy a creature or enchantment. We're playing mono black, so this is vital. Final Parting, one card in our graveyard, 1 in our hand. And this will more often than not be used to go get our Mike and Try combo, but if we're not feeling it, we don't have to. Footsteps of the Goryo. This is a classic, and this is something I used to do when these sets originally came out. Black and 2 for this sorcery. Return target creature card from our graveyard to play. Sacrifice that creature at end of turn. I used to play a black-blue Spirits deck with this, and it ran both Kokusho, and it ran the Blue Dragon as well. Its name eludes me this second, but with those guys in the graveyard, you pay 3 mana, it comes back into play, and then you get the die trigger at the end of the turn. Yes, please. Innocent Blood. Each player sacrifices a creature. 1 black, nice and clean. Gonna try out Invoke Despair. This can really hose down an opponent. Quad black and 1. Target opponent sacrifices a creature. If they can't, they lose 2 life and we draw a card. Repeat this process for an enchantment and a planeswalker. So the fact that this is yet another black spell that can get rid of an enchantment is what makes this really, really nice. And it's a 3-for-1 no matter what. It's either we draw 3 cards, if our opponent has like nothing on the board, like quite literally nothing, or it takes 3 permanents off of that opponent's board, or somewhere in between. I think it's a cool card. Let's see how well it does. A Necromantic Selection. Triple black and 4. Destroy all creatures, then return a creature card put into a graveyard this way to the battlefield under our control. It's a black zombie. Exile Necromantic Selection. Our commander's on the battlefield. We need to wipe the board. This is the one we're going to use. Knight's Whisper, draw 2 cards, lose 2 life. Just some good old-fashioned card draw. Reanimate, of course. 1 black, pay 5 life, get our commander back onto the battlefield. Yes, please. Sign in Blood as well. This is the textless version that's up here, but it's draw 2 cards, lose 2 life. Soul Transfer. I still got the French version coming up in my program here. Translation Dame. And it's choose 1, exile a creature or planeswalker, or return a creature or planeswalker from our graveyard to our hand. But if we control both an artifact and an enchantment, we can choose both modes. Stitch Together, double black to return a creature card from our graveyard to our hand. If we happen to have, say, 7 cards or more in our graveyard, which is what Threshold is, return that card from the graveyard to the battlefield instead. Victimize, sacrifice 1 creature, bring 2 back from our yard. Zombify, just straight up bring a creature back from our graveyard to the battlefield. And again, every time it's going to be our commander that we do this to. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank everyone for watching and checking out the first of my deck techs from Neon Dynasty. There's a lot of brewing I want to do with this set. There's a lot of heaters. A lot of great workhorse cards in this set. I remember with the original Kamigawa, if I may touch on this quickly, no, I wasn't playing Commander at the time. It was not even a figment of anyone's imagination, really, when that set came out. But I was doing a lot of experimenting and a lot of brewing, and I had a lot of fun with that block, actually. So, maybe the fact that I was never really the Friday Night Magic standard all-star, that was never my game. And that's probably why I enjoyed Kamigawa more than most when the set was originally released. This, however, I think everyone is going to love. Everyone is super, super stoked to come back to Kamigawa. And the cards, again, they're all bringing the heat. So, hope you all have fun with it. I think pre-release is this coming weekend. So, hope you get some good pulls there. I myself am looking to pick up not a draft booster box, but a set booster box. I'm going to crack that open on camera, I think. So, with that in mind, I'm going to go on to my next sort of brew here. And until then, we'll see you next time. Bye for now.